Well, hello, everyone. It's welcome to the regular meeting of the Larkspur City Council for Wednesday, November 4th, 2020. It's now 6:30 p.m. If you're here, you know we are doing a video conference, teleconference only on Zoom, and the instructions on how to dial in and how to send in an email are on the top of the agenda. We have a lot to cover tonight, but we'd like to start with a roll call, please.
Councilmember Candell,
I'm here.
Councilmember Gilmer,
Here.
Councilmember Paulson,
Here.
Vice Mayor Haroff. I believe we're working to get him back. He should be with us shortly. And Mayor Way.
I'm here. Yeah, I saw that Kevin was having some trouble with his video after our closed session. But he'll join us, I'm sure. That brings us to number 2, which is public comment. This is a time for the members of the public to address the City Council for items not on the agenda. I'd like to point out that on the agenda tonight, we have a presentation about the Larkspur Community Foundation update. We also have a Bon Air Bridge Replacement Project update and things about a letter of intent between the city and the Commons Foundation, and also a financial update. So if there are matters here that you would like to comment on that are not those matters that are on the agenda, please do so, and by raising your hand, if your hand is in the audience, and I will recognize you. It looks like we have 2 people. And remember, when we have items that are not on the agenda, the council really cannot spend much time, if at all, talking about them because they have not been agendized for the rest of the community. So let me see what Wendy, welcome to the Larkspur City Council. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Wendy Nestle, and I'm one of the 23 commissioners on the Marin County Commission on Aging and represent District 2, which includes Larkspur. I also work for the San Francisco Department of Public Health as a medical social worker, making home visits to Spanish-speaking patients. The Marin County Commission on Aging is a federally mandated advisory council. Larkspur has a city-appointed person named Judy Saffron, who you guys may know, and I'm the district-appointed person appointed by Katie Rice. Our mission is to promote the dignity, independence, and quality of life of older adults through advocacy, information, programs, and services. Our committees include housing and transportation, health and nutrition, planning, and legislative, and we have recently formed a new subcommittee focused on equity, outreach, and advocacy, of which I'm the vice chair. We want to identify unserved and or underserved people in Marin and form relationships to coordinate efforts to serve everyone in our community. We want to learn about what groups and agencies are already doing and to see if we can support those efforts in some way. Our hope is to connect people to services by collaborating and offering our support, educating service providers and individuals about what Marin Commission on Aging offers, and inviting everyone to our presentations and meetings. We want everyone to have a seat at the table and for all voices to be heard. The Marin Commission on Aging has monthly meetings that are held on the first Thursday at 10 a.m., now via Zoom. The first hour is a presentation featuring a guest speaker on a topic of interest to older adults, their families, and professionals. Then the commission business meeting follows from 11:15 to 12:30, and all are invited to attend, as well as to speak during the time allotted for public comment. So tomorrow is the first Thursday of the month, and we have a presentation at 10 a.m. and the title is COVID-19 and Mental Health, Fresh Perspectives. So we invite everyone to join in on that if they're interested, or in any of our meetings. For more information, you can contact Aging and Adult Services at 415-473-INFO, which is 4636, or you can go to the Marin County website, www.marinhhs.org. I look forward to working together to serve all in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy, for that. And please reach out to me with your contact information through my city website. I'd like to follow up on some ideas with you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
That brings us to a phone number, which is ends in 1151. Could you please unmute yourself and tell us who you are, if you would like?
Yes, please. This is Dr. Stephen Wagstaff calling in again for the 3rd time. And I understand that the bridge is on the agenda, but this is not related to that update. Again, continue to have dangerous situations in my office twice on last Friday, and I actually emailed you, Mayor,
Yes.
about this, and I still haven't been reached out to by the city. So the last 2 times it was that you would reach out to me, somebody would, and still hasn't happened, and it's continuing to be a big problem.
I plan to do that today, I mean, tomorrow after this meeting, after I get the formal update. So I will be reaching out to you with having a Zoom or an in-person meeting with yourself and me and City Manager Dan Schwartz. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience? Looks like none. And I assume that's the right phone number. So let me write that down. 115. All right. So seeing no other raised hands, and Allison, are there any emails that have come in?
Thank you. I'm looking for any emailed public comment at this time, and there is none.
All right. Thank you. So we will close public comment and move on to number 3, which is a presentation and proclamation. We're very pleased tonight for 3.1 to have the Larkspur Community Foundation update from Joan Lundstrom and Larry Chu, 2 of our esteemed post colleagues from the City Council. I'll also like to point everyone in the direction of their written report. Their written report is not on here yet, but it will be. Who's speaking tonight? Is it Joan? Joan and Larry. Terrific. Well, welcome you 2. And I'm very pleased to see that very comprehensive 2020 update you submitted to us. So take it away.
I want to make sure, yeah, there, I'm on.
You are.
There. Thanks for letting Larry and I update you tonight on the Community Foundation, because this has been a really challenging year. Just a bit of brief background. We're among the newest of city community foundations. So we have a very modest budget, giving out small grants which focus on specific projects or activities in the Larkspur community. As such, we don't undertake projects ourselves, such as people would like us to plant street medians, but if somebody comes forward who wants to do that for a grant, then we can make that. Also, we don't make grants to general budgets of either a public or nonprofit agency. Over the past 5 years, our track record is we've made some 31 grants to date, and that's attached to the list that we sent you. And of those 31 grants, it's important to note that 20 of those grants were made to the city for city projects, or 2/3 of our grants are to our city parks, city recreation, city library, Central Marin Fire, Child Care Center, and the National Neighborhood Disaster Preparedness Groups. Then besides the grants, our other hat is we work closely with the city, acting as fiscal sponsor for any community groups or people who want to raise funds for projects to receive tax credits for their donations, like Heatherwood Park. To date, all those funds that we've raised in that category have been for city projects. What have we done this year? Okay, the now annual Heart of Larkspur Volunteer Appreciation Event. Just before the virus set us down, we had 120 attendees representing a wide variety of organizations, boards, and commissions. And our local merchants and even our police chief stepped up with many donor prizes. The chief had a ride-along for everybody, for folks. And then we made a special effort this year to reach out to honor the representatives of the many NRG groups in Larkspur and Greenbrae. But what about our fiscal sponsorships this year? This year, another NRG group asked the foundation to hold donations they collected for emergency response for their neighborhoods. But also now there's exciting news from the Larkspur History Fund, another fund we are holding as fiscal sponsor. That fund was established by contributions in memory of the late Helen Heitkamp, and they now have a substantial amount to work with. So they have been working with the Preservation Board to convert our history book, Larkspur Past and Present, to digital form, and maybe even history walks that can go online. That's really exciting news. Stay tuned. They're working hard with Heritage and also with the city librarian. So Larry will now update you on our 2020 grants.
Joan, thank you very much. Your camera went off. I don't know if that was intentional, but
No,
we see your lovely name, but not your lovely face if you want to.
sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead, Larry.
Hey, good morning, or good evening, Madam Mayor.
There we go.
Larkspur City Council. In 2020, the Larkspur Community Foundation primarily focused its efforts on providing assistance to those who are impacted by COVID-19. So this year, there were a total of 6 grants totaling $30,000. The recipients of these grants were as follows. $10,000 was given in matching funds to the Larkspur Chamber of Commerce in a GoFundMe campaign to support small businesses within the community. With contributions from the city of Larkspur and the county of Marin, this campaign raised about $51,000 to assist our local merchants. There were 3 grants that were $5,000 each. One was to the LCM school district to provide academic support and child care intervention to those who are economically challenged families. There was a grant to Marin and Richmond to provide child care to essential workers and students in the Kentfield School District who qualified for free or reduced cost lunches. And there was a $5,000 grant also given to the Neighborhood Response Group program to help facilitate disaster preparedness in our local neighborhoods. There were a couple grants for $2,500 each, one to the Scheurig Center for Brain Injury Recovery. With the closure of their facility, the grant provided 2 months of funding for community liaison position with focus on outreach, remote service planning, and resource assistance. And we also gave $2,500 to the San Andreas High School to provide additional counseling support to students to help them deal with the anxiety and depression that they were experiencing. So to help fund these projects, the foundation relies solely on the generosity of the residents in our community. Our annual year-end fundraising campaign is going to be kicking off shortly, and we hope that we can continue to rely on your individual contributions as well as for you to encourage others in the community to support our efforts. For those people who want to contribute, we can do so on our website, and that is larkspurcommunityfoundation.org. So we thank you for the opportunity to address the council, and if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them at this moment.
Thank you, Joan, and thank you, Larry. On your fundraising end of year, do you have a goal set?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Larry.
No, I don't have an answer for that.
Okay, just as much as possible.
Okay, actually, this year our budget was $30,000, which we spent. So we wiped out our grant budget. We have to replenish it. So we our untouched funds for tapping into. We have about $22,000. We're not rich, we're modest. So we depend on people the one time of the year writing a check for us, because we don't have any fancy balls or anything like that. So, and that'll do as much as we can, because we know the needs out there this year in particular.
Are there members of the council who'd like to make any comments or questions?
I would. I'm sorry, my screen is dark.
Kendall.
Sorry, Gabe, I just saw your hands. Yeah, my question was, I would love for the city council to be your partner or supporter or whatever we can do. Is there anything that you can think of that we as a city council can do to either publicize what you're doing or somehow help support you?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think publicize, because it's always, we have a website, go to it, check us out. We've got 2 former mayors. We've got folks who've been on the Tam High board and on the LCM school board, but it's getting the word out. And we're a new foundation.
And to donate.
And to donate, yeah. And especially we have. I was kind of surprised the percentage that went to the city, because we try to be broadly based. Like we've given to the Lark Theater for their marquee. We've given to Twin Cities Village and Schurig Center and a number of things like that.
We have a question from Councilmember Gabe Paulson and then Councilmember Dan Hilmers next.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I first I wanted to Scott kind of asked my question, to see how we could support you, and I will bear that in mind. And I also wanted to thank you. I believe with the Business Chamber of Commerce, I think you were a big part of that. Money we raised, the $51,000 that went out to the businesses. So thank you for that, especially because the chamber has been really trying to establish itself as well, and and many of the businesses, smaller mortars, need the help. So thank you very much for that, and I hope we can continue the dialogue and getting the word out for you.
Dan Hilmer, do you have something?
Only to express my gratitude for all the work of the foundation and its members. Thank you so much.
Great.
But this is a great community, and we were glad because we're small, we're flexible, and we actually we can reach out to folks, and we stand ready for all the challenges coming up.
So Joan, thank you and accept our appreciation. And I see some members of your board. Sally Ann is in the audience. For our
and Madam Mayor, if you can hear me, this is Kevin Haroff. I'm actually on after some initial technical issues, but I'd like to say something once others have an opportunity to speak.
We've said you're up now.
Oh, me?
Yes. So
I just wanted to chime in with Councilmember Hilmer's expression of appreciation for the foundation. The work that they have been doing, the support that they've been giving to our community at large in big and small ways is so much appreciated. And we're so grateful to have the engagement of community members to do this kind of work, because it's important for a small community like us. We don't have necessarily the resources that some of our larger neighbors have in San Rafael and Novato. To have this level of engagement in our local community is remarkable and so much appreciated.
If there are, I see a pretty small audience tonight, but if there are members of the audience who would like to raise their hand and ask a question, they can. But I'd like to thank the members of the audience who are also members of this foundation for all of your volunteer work for the community. I don't see any hands raised, so I'd like, Joan, you have a following?
If we, as we go out the door, we'll say all donations are gratefully received, and check out our website. It's really good.
Great.
Your picture might be there too.
Oh no, hopefully not mine.
Hopefully we meet in person again, because I really like that event of the Heart of Larkspur when we started.
That's where we took pictures.
Yeah. All right, thank you. You're welcome to stay, but I think you're now being asked to virtually leave the room.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Yes, bye, Larry. All right, thank you, everyone. That brings us to 3.2, which is a Bon Air Bridge replacement project, the fall 2020 update. Do we have a staff report, or who will be doing this presentation?
Yes, good evening, Public Works Director Julian Skinner. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so we have a brief update on our fairly large capital project that's underway, Bon Air Bridge replacement project. We've been coming to you about every 6 months or so. And so we were last before you in February, I believe. So we're going to have a little overview of what's been going on the bridge for the last 6 months. And then we'll do our usual check-in on where we are on the cost and the schedule for the project. And then we'll also talk about what's coming up in the next 6 months. So just as you know, this project started over 2 years ago in May of 2018. You awarded a construction contract based on the low bidder for just under 27 million. And the contractor has 4 years and 1 month to complete the work. So that's a June 2022 completion date. And so I think of all the questions I get about this project, everything going on out in the field, the number one question is, why is it taking 4 years to build this bridge? And so I did want to talk a little bit, remind folks of the project constraints that we're working with, some factors that are making this project into a 4-year project. There's certainly bridges out there that are built on a faster track than that. And so this is a bridge replacement project. So building a brand new bridge where there was none before would be quicker. As you can see in the photo here, looking from left to right, we have a section of the new bridge that's already been built. Essentially, the north half of the bridge has been built and cars are running on that today. Kind of in the middle of the photo, there were the remnants of the old bridge. That's half of the old bridge. That's where cars were running on while we were building the north half of the bridge. And then on the far right is a temporary bridge. That's what the contractor is using to stage his work from. So we're essentially building the bridge in 2 halves. So demolishing and then building the north half, and now flopping over and demolishing and building the south half. So we're taking this project and splitting it into 2 basically, and that affects the project schedule, especially when coupled with the other constraint that we're dealing with, which is the environmental conditions. There's a list at the bottom there of all of the sensitive species that are within the influence zone of the work. The 2 that are highlighted here are the ones that are affecting the schedule. The Ridgeway rail, formerly the Clapper rail, and then the steelhead trout. And so here is the project, a bar scale of the project schedule from left to right, start to finish, May of 2018 through to June of 2022, with the basic scopes of work that we're performing. On top of the bar chart is the north side work. And then as we get to mid of 2020, we're now on the south side. So what I want to do is overlay on this schedule those constraints we have for the environmental conditions. So the blue period here is the time when we cannot do any work in the water. So if you look at this 4-year schedule, if you take all of those months where there's a blue bar on top of it, we're not allowed to do any work in the water during those times. So that definitely affects the schedule. And then you couple with that the bird impacts. So the Ridgeway rail is a concern on the north side of the bridge. So when we were working on the north side of the bridge, we weren't able to do anything that had a noise louder than ambient during these red periods. And so that really confines the schedule and forces the contractor to split up his work. And as we've seen, and we will see in the future, there will be times where there's very limited activity on the bridge as we wait for these environmental windows to pass. And so essentially we're building it in 2 halves, and this is the same process they did on the north side. You'll see on the south side. These are photos from what we did on the north side. So first we demolished the old bridge, working clockwise from top left here, demolished the old bridge, and then they put the CIDH piles in. Those are cast in drilled holes, piles that go into the creek, 8-foot diameter. They essentially drill it out about 100 feet down. They get down to the rock, and then they drill down 20 feet into the rock so that the new piles are anchored in rock. And then we build the piles up with rebar and concrete. And then the bottom left, that's called a bent cap. That's essentially the member that sits on top of the pile. And that supports the girders, which is in the bottom right photo. The girders are essentially the structural members on which the bridge deck sits. So that's how it looked when we did the north side. Here's what we've done on the south side so far. This was back in March. We're looking at the temporary trestle is over on the left side of the photo here. Then the middle, that's the remnants of the south side of the old bridge. And then at this point, we had opened up the new north side to traffic. And so here's some stages of demolition from left to right. They demolished the old bridge deck. Again, the structure in the middle here is the old bridge. And then they took the girders off, and then they took all the piles down to the water line. If you look in the far right photo, that's the remnants of the old piles for the bridge. Eventually, all those piles that are sticking up that supported the old bridge, they all get cut down to 2 feet below the mud line so that they're not sticking up in the water anymore. So once we had the bridge demolished, the next thing was they expand the trestle a little bit. So they build what are called finger trestles off of the main trestle so they can get right next to where the new 4 columns in the water will go. So as you look at these photos here, you see a large red crane and a white crane that are sitting on the trestle. And those are maneuvered close to the kind of the 4 gaps in the finger trestles. And that's where each one of the 4 piles in the creek go. And here's a shot of them lowering the 100-foot long section of rebar cage down into one of those drilled holes before they put the concrete in. The other part of this bridge project is a storm drain pump station that'll help to drain the west side of the bridge because that it used to flood in winter conditions. So the pump station is all complete, and fingers crossed, tomorrow PG&E will be setting the meter for this stormwater pump station. And so this pump station will be all online. The photos here on the left, that's the underground vault that holds, there's a holding tank there for the water to collect. And then there's pumps, 3 big pumps in there to pump the water out. And then the middle photo is the control cabinet. That's all the electrical and control systems that tell the pumps when to come on and when to turn off. And then on the right, there's the pump discharge. That's a pipe that goes from the pump station that discharges into Corte Madera Creek. And so, as you'll recall, this pump station not only services the bridge, but we do have another city project to improve some of the storm drains in the neighboring Hillview subdivision. And so when we get those pipes reconfigured in the Hillview subdivision, those pipes will come through and connect to this pump station for their discharge. And then this is just a quick kind of view as to what we're doing and what we've seen and what's coming next. This is kind of a section view here with the existing north side construction on the left, kind of looking at this in cross section. And there was the old bridge, the south side on the right. The first thing we did was demolish the old bridge. And now on the bottom is what it'll look like when it's all finished. And so what we've been doing so far is all of the work before we can get to what we call the superstructure. So a lot of it's been underwater, not a whole lot to see, but we've built the 4 columns on which the bent caps will sit. So that's the next phase of construction you'll see over the next few months. They have coffer dams in the creek, which are essentially sheet piles that isolate where we're building these bent caps from the creek so that they can work there during the in-water window. And then once they get the bent caps on, they'll come in, they'll set the girders and do the bridge deck on top of that. This is our kind of track of where we are on the project. We look at the schedule. So the middle column is the total project allowance. And then the first column is where we are, and then a percentage at the end. So this is as of September 30th. Of this year. So 866 work days. So we're 58% of the way through the schedule. So we're more than halfway through the 4 years and 1 month. The construction cost, so this is a tracking of how much work's been done. So they've actually done 71% of the work in 58% of the time. So we're ahead of schedule. But that's the way it needs to be, because as we come up in January, February, we've got those in-water work windows, and the work will slow down somewhat. And then the other thing we track is the change orders. So these are for either change conditions or value added work. And so this, as an example, we had some utilities that were not marked that were in the way. So we had to pay the contractor to compensate them for the effort to avoid or relocate those utilities. And there's also some value add things. We've added some battery backup at the signals near the bridge. And then we also added a transfer switch to the pump station control panel so that we can hook a generator up to it in the event that we have a power failure. So at the moment, we're tracking 2.3% of our contingency allowance. 2.3% of the project total has been spent on contingencies. Caltrans allows us a 10% allowance. So we're at 2.3 out of the 10 at the moment.
Madam Mayor, can I just interject there? I just want to comment on, well, I want to say some things about the project overall when we get finished with the presentation, but while we're talking about change orders, I think that percentage of change orders is actually terrific. I don't think I've ever seen a project where the percentage increase of project cost as a result of change orders has been as modest as that. And I think it's quite impressive that we're able to manage that in as cost-effective a way as we have been. So congratulations, Julian, for that.
Yeah, so far so good, yeah. The next slide here is just kind of a description of the work. This is the same slide I've been showing in each presentation, and I'm just striking stuff out as we get to it. And so I've highlighted where we are at the moment. And so as you can see, we're falling in line with the schedule that we provided at the beginning of the project. We're currently working on a Southside Bridge foundation, which will go all the way through next spring and summer, followed by some other tasks that I'll detail a little bit later in another slide. I did also want to remind folks that we do have a project website, bonairbridge.com. There's a phone number and an email on there for anybody that has questions about the project. We put out a newsletter about every 2 or 3 months that kind of highlights the major tasks that we're undertaking at that time. The other thing that we point out to people on the schedule, on the website is a schedule. A lot of questions we get about when is the project going to be finished. So June 22 is the projected finish date for this project. There are some other milestones that we'll get to before that, but the actual contractor leaves the site and everything's cleaned up is June 22nd. The blue arrow on here just shows where we are currently, and so we're right on schedule in the fourth quarter of 2020. That's the schedule that's on the website, mainly because we just are showing the major components of work to let folks know where we are. There's obviously way more detailed schedules that we deal with every day. This is actually a rolled up schedule that the contractor produces. This is one of those schedules where if I printed it out in its entirety, I could wallpaper my office with it. There are lots of tasks going on. This is a condensed version. And so all of these bars with the colors are the work tasks that are underway. And one thing I'll show here is there's a gap in the middle. You see all the green bars kind of working from the top left, and then there's a gap, and then we get into some red bars. That gap there is our in-water work window. We're going to get to a point where we could keep going, but we're going to be prevented from doing the next stage of work because we can't get in the water till June 15th. And so, you know, we do get a lot of questions about why we don't put more detailed information about schedule on the website. And the one thing I can say about the schedule is it will change. There are lots of factors that can affect the schedule. Here's one that we look at every week with a contractor. This is an example of his 3-week look ahead schedule. Where he shows all the week that's projected, all the work that's projected to take place over the next 3 weeks. If we have a significant work item that's going to affect a nearby business, such as we're going to do work in front of a driveway and we need to close a driveway, we talk with that neighbor one-on-one once we have these dates penciled in on the schedule. But again, these are all subject to change based on a number of conditions that we've seen throughout this project. One of the things we're struggling with is this is a concrete bridge primarily. And since the onset of COVID, there's a West Coast cement shortage. And so every construction project is trying to get in line at the concrete plants to get their concrete delivery scheduled. And so what this does for us is we have our 3-week schedule. We think we have a day with the drilling and getting the rebar set when we want to have concrete. We've got to try and hit that date. If we don't, it can take 2 to 3 weeks to get that concrete pour rescheduled just because of the backlog of all the projects that are trying to get concrete during the cement shortage. And so a lot of these things are sequential. And so that 2 to 3 week delay could push the project out by 2 to 3 weeks because there's certain things that can't take place and the concrete's got to get put in place and then it has to set typically for 4 weeks before it's structurally sound to do the next phase on. The other thing that can impact us is weather. Obviously, in the winter, there are certain things that we can't do because of environmental regulations. If there's a certain amount of rain, we don't want to be doing work out there that could lead to polluting the creek. So we do have restrictions with weather. And then fires obviously can create this photo here was kind of our Mars Day when we had orange skies. But also the thing with the fires is it does impact some of our partners too. If we have work scheduled with PG&E, not only do we need their services for the pump station and for the street lights, but they also have their own infrastructure on the bridge that we need them to do certain work for. If their crews get called away for fires, then it impacts the whole schedule also. And then just utilities in general, working in a congested corridor. There's a lot of known and unknown utilities that we've run into. And those have to be handled appropriately with the utility. We need to make sure that they're safely relocated. And so all of these things can crop up and can push certain dates one way or another. But the overall project schedule is still on track. But we do have often work items that are pushed out, a week or so from what we anticipate just because we have one of these issues. Talk about the upcoming work. So as I mentioned, the columns are all in the creek right now. So over the next few months, you'll see them build those columns up to the point where they can put the bent caps on. They're working inside the cofferdam, so they're isolated from the creek, so they're allowed to keep going with that work past November 30th. However, when they're finished that work, they have to remove the cofferdams, the sheet piles from the creek, and they won't be able to do that till June 15th. And so what that effectively does is it delays us putting the girders on top of the bridge, because once we put the girders on top of the bent caps, we wouldn't be able to pull the sheet piles out anymore because we wouldn't be able to get to them because they would be under the girders. So that's a work window where you'll see probably March, April, things will slow down a little bit because we won't be able to get back into the creek. We certainly work with the regulatory agencies every time we have one of these windows to document the exact work that we're doing and see if there's any leeway in those dates. And so that's another reason why some of these dates may change. They're based on permit dates, dates that are in our permits. But once we have a better idea of the exact work that we're going to do, we can talk to those regulatory agencies and see if there's any other mitigations that we can do to try and work around some of those dates. So assuming that we're stuck with the June 15th in work window, the first thing they'll do is pull the cofferdams out of the creek next June, and then they'll erect the girders. That's one of those items that we try to pinpoint on the schedule as early as we can, because it does require a 1-week closure of the bridge, similar to what we did on the south side. So tentatively, we're looking at probably late July of next year is when we would have that next 1-week closure of the bridge, and that will be landing the girders on the south side. Once the girders are in, they can move forward with casting the concrete bridge deck. And then they'll do a closure pour, which is they'll have the two halves of the bridge that don't quite touch. They'll come in and they'll put concrete and rebar to meld those two north and south sections together. That requires another bridge closure, mainly because we can't have traffic on the bridge when we're putting the concrete in between the two of them, because the bridge would be moving around and the bridge needs to be stationary when we're pouring concrete. And then a couple of other milestones to look out for. Once we've got the bridge closure pour done and we've got all the safety railings up on the bridge, we could conceivably open up the south side of the bridge to traffic in January of 2022. And then, as I mentioned before, the projected completion date is May or June of 2022. So that's it for the quick update on where we are and what to look for in the next 6 months or so. Once we have some better idea on schedule, we've got some feedback from the regulatory agencies and we've got a better pinpoint on the schedule. We'll be back spring or early summer next year to give you another 6-month look ahead. So with that, I'm available for any questions.
Well, that's a great report. It's an extraordinarily complex project, and I'm continue to be amazed at how much you're juggling as far as the construction responsibilities, the endangered species, all the utilities, the traffic flow so we don't impede the emergency access to the hospital, and all of the businesses that are around there while we have a complicated infrastructure project happening. So I appreciate these updates. I'm going to open it up to the council for questions, but one comment or question I had was, even although construction began in May 2018, the planning for this project was at least 5 to 8 years before that, if my memory is correct, as far as having our public planning process about how what the bridge would look like, vetting the neighborhood and all of the businesses and community around there participating, suggestions on ways to mitigate the impact. All that took place for at least 5 years in advance of the 2018 start. Am I correct with recognizing that?
Yeah, that was before my time. I would say at least 8 years.
I was going to say it goes
Yeah.
beyond that. Yeah.
I've been on the council since 2013, and I know it was talked about long before I was there. And I'm it's been a very complex project that requires a lot of noisy parts and complicated parts, especially at the same time the hospital was undergoing some renovations. But it has been a project well in the discussion phase for a long time. So I just want to put that out there. And I understand scheduling, now that you've put that forward, is complex to schedule around all of those variables that are shifting at any given time. Even the fires that created the Mars landscape, which made it unhealthy to work outside, is something you can't even anticipate. So thank you for that report. I might have other questions in a few minutes, but is there other council members who have a question? If it's possible for my other council members, I know we're having video problems tonight, to turn on your video screen. I think the community appreciates that, if it's possible, although some of us are having trouble with our Wi-Fi service tonight. Yeah. So Kate Paulson has a hand up. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Julian, thanks a lot for the presentation. Quick clarification, the Bonaire pump station that you mentioned, my recollection from the flood plan, master plan, was that we had about a $13 million budget for all the different pump stations, and Bonaire was the biggest, probably 4.3 million. So of the 26.5 million allocated and the 58% of the work done, can you break down how much of that has to do with the pump station? Is that all part of that, or is that separate?
Yeah, no, the pump station cost is included in the bridge contractor's work. It's included in that 26.7 million. The pump station is about, it's just over $2 million worth of work of the bridge project. And then there's more work to take place in the subdivision behind to get those pipes to come to the pump station, which is not included in that. But the pump station itself, what I showed in the photos there, is about a $2 million improvement.
Okay, so the pump station's about half of what the master flood plan allocated. I think it was 4.3 million, and that's work to be done outside of the pump itself. So the different conduits or whatever that it's moving water.
Yeah, the 4.3 million included soft costs too. So that included all the engineering, which has already taken place for the pump station, and construction management. So yeah, the 2 million that's in the ground, there's not another $1 million of storm drain to go in. There's not the difference between the 2 and the 4.3, because that 4.3 includes some other costs too.
Okay, and so Hillview, for example, it sounds like with PG&E coming, that should be operational, and but without the piping, they wouldn't necessarily be protected from any flooding in this winter season of 2020-21.
Yeah, some of the storm drains in the Hillview neighborhood need to be reconfigured in order to make the storm drainage flow to the new pump station. As it is now, I think only the end of Harvard has storm drains that will connect to the pump station. The Hillview project will then install new piping on Harvard that will redirect storm drain flow that's currently going directly to the creek, take that to the pump station through the end of Harvard. So yeah, there will not be any direct benefit to Hillview this winter from the pump station, other than the very end of Harvard. But once the pipes are installed in Hillview, then they will realize that benefit from the pump station.
Okay, thank you very much, Julian.
And Julian, just to circle back, did I hear you say we had 4 large pilings that had to go in? two on each side, and that I'm sorry,
Yeah.
and that was where the real pile driving, I guess they're piling, so there's big pile driving.
Right.
Are we completed with the pile driving at this point, or do you know?
Yeah, so there's so the pile driving, primarily the big piles are the ones that are supporting the bridge. So there's 4 of those actually on each side of the bridge. So 4 on the south, 4 on the north that were done last year, and then 4 8-foot diameter pilings that were done this year that will support the bridge. Now, those are all being vibrated in for the most part, so it's not the bang, bang, bang that people are used to from pile driving. It's still a noisy operation, and they do actually have to get driven. They have to get hit a few times to make sure that they're at refusal. But for the most part, they're being vibrated in. So there's the 8 big piles out in the creek. Then the abutments, which is the concrete that the bridge sits on at each end as it connects to the road. Those concrete abutments are also supported by piles. I think there's 6 piles under each one of those abutments. They're a smaller pile, but they're also vibrated in. And then the other piles, obviously the temporary trestle is supported by about 100 piles that are out in the creek. So we're all finished with all of the piles except for, I think, the 6 that are left at the abutment at the South Alicio side. Are scheduled to go in a couple of weeks. And there's probably, 5 to 10 days of that pile driving, depending on how easy it is for them to go into the ground. So once those piles are in, then the only remaining pile work will be to pull the sheet piles out of the creek. Not as noisy an operation when you pull the piles out, but they're still big metal sheets and they do vibrate against one another. And then when they pull the trestle piles out of the creek. So after about 3 weeks from now, there will be no more pile driving per se, but they will have to remove some of the temporary piles from the work site.
Thank you. But it's an important and necessary part of making this bridge engineeringly stable and safe for our community. So thank you for that. I see Dan Hilmer's hand is raised. Dan? Are you there, Dan Hilmer? I guess he canceled out there. Is there another? We're having technical difficulties tonight. Are there other further questions of the council members? Scott Candell, are you?
Catherine, yeah, and first of all, let me get this for you. I apologize. I actually have a back injury, so I'm spending part of this meeting on my back, which is why I have the video on. It's not a technical issue. Okay. So I apologize for that.
No,
I just wanted to follow up, if I may, on your question. And I know, please, I'm not holding you to anything, but if we could talk in generalities as far as schedule and noise and things of that nature. What I'm hearing from you is that we have a couple more weeks of what we would consider high noise, high impact work that has to be done. At that point, should we expect it to taper off as different parts of the project take place, as we have to stop because of the fish and the birds and all the other stuff going on? Is it accurate to say that we should expect it to get a little bit softer after this phase that we're doing right now?
I would say yes, but again, it's all relative. The noisiest parts of the work are the demolition and the pile driving. There's about a week left of demolition at the South Alicio end, and then the 2 weeks of pile driving. After that, they're basically doing concrete forming, which is they're putting wood forms up everywhere for the new concrete work, and pouring concrete. Then they'll be coming in and erecting girders and pouring the deck. None of that is impact work per se that's going to be as noisy as pile driving or demolition, but it's still heavy machinery working on the trestle. It's still backup alarms and it's still generator noise. But I would say yes, it's at a lower level than what you're going to get with the pile driving and the demolition.
Scott, did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you. I appreciate that. And Madam Mayor, with your permission, I'm going to leave my video off just so I don't want to distract people. Okay, thank you.
And I hope your back feels better.
Thank you.
Did you have a question, Kevin?
A comment and a question. One is, this is like the best project in the world. I go down there at least 2 or 3 times a week to go for runs, and I run over the bridge or by the bridge, and just to see the progress that we've made over a period of time to get that thing done. Like some of us on this call, we've been living with this bridge for a long period of time, and to see the progress that's being made to actually get it done is exciting to me, at least, and I enjoy every time I have a chance to go across it. One of the things that I do kind of on the side is work with other members in our larger community on issues related to climate change and sea level rise. And one of the points that I emphasize in those conversations is that although the approval and design of the bridge kind of predated a lot of the more current concerns about those issues at this point, then nevertheless, the bridge design is something that will accommodate adaptation strategies for sea level rise in particular that are currently being discussed within the community, and that has to do with the height of the bridge over the creek and the reduced number of columns that are being placed into the water. So to me, that's a real source of pride and something that I like to highlight. And I'm hoping that Julian can join me in some of those conversations with our larger community on those issues to emphasize how the bridge design and functioning will be consistent with our larger goals to address climate change issues. So more on that in terms of an invitation. If you haven't already received that, you may have. The other thing that I always emphasize in those conversations is the fact that we do have a variety of environmental mitigation measures that have been required by the regional board and other environmental agencies. We talked a little bit about the pump station. I guess that is in that category, but there are a handful of others. And I guess my question, Julian, is where are we in terms of the implementation of the Magnolia drainage system, among others, but also some of the other creekside environmental mitigation measures that we've got in the works?
Yeah, so there are a handful of mitigation projects that are tied to the bridge that will be going out as a separate contract. We have a consultant working on finalizing the design for those. At the moment, we're working with the regulatory agencies on finalizing those projects and making sure that all of the components were in compliance with the permits, and we've gone through that process. So now we are having the consultant get a package ready basically to go into Caltrans. It's got to go through their process to approve it before we can go out to bid. A lot of those projects, there's a tidal marsh restoration where the existing dog park is.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, right. And then we have the 2 public docks that will get replaced and with ADA compliant docks, one next to the rowing club and then the other at Bon Air Landing Park. Those, while they are mitigation projects associated with permits, they have the same permitting guidelines, meaning that we can only do that work a certain time of the year. So we're aiming to get those projects out to bid in spring of next year so that we can hit the friendly time to be in the water to do those projects towards the end of next summer and then through to completion about the same time as the bridge is completed in mid-22.
Okay, that's very helpful because as I said, I like to promote those additional environmental benefits that are attached to the bridge but have their own value. And we'll see those implemented during the course of the next year. They'll improve shoreline and habitat throughout the stretch of Cormandera Creek that's within our jurisdiction.
Yeah, and I think will probably be appropriate at the next project, the next bridge update when we come to you in spring, that we'll fold those the status of those mitigation projects into that update too.
That'd be great. Thank you.
All right, just had to move a fan around. Is there other council members that would have a question of Public Works Director Julian Skinner?
Dan Hilmer here. Just
Yes.
thank you, Julian, for a very comprehensive presentation. And also, I just want to recognize the significance of the work being done on the bridge, especially this go around. I've been on the council a long time, and the Bon Air Bridge has been an ongoing challenge, and getting it to a point now where everything is current, compliant, state of the art. I think that's quite an accomplishment, and I just want, on behalf of the council, express my appreciation for all your work, Julian. It's a monumental effort.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, fortunately, we have a really good contractor too that we're able to work with. And on a project this size, you have to do partnering. So we meet with the contractor, and we often brainstorm about ways to either make the project go quicker or make it more efficient, or do something that will improve the conditions for the public that have to make their way through there every day.
Yes, I think that's very true, that infrastructure projects are never easy. They're never convenient, and they often don't go as planned. And it takes a lot of patience by the community, and it takes a lot of patience by those who have to interact with it, because I know it's dirty, noisy, messy, uncomfortable, but it always is like that. And we're really trying our hardest to minimize that impact. So thank you for that. There's no more comment from the council members. Is there any?
Madam Mayor, may I just make
yes.
one more closing comment?
Sure.
I just want to express my appreciation to the community and all the cooperating businesses around the area for their patience. This has been a long haul, but the consistent expression of support for this project by the community, I think, speaks for itself. So I just thank the community for all their patience and cooperation.
Hear, hear.
All right, this is open to the public. And I know we did have one comment about it earlier in the evening, which I'll follow up on with this phone number that's been listed. Seeing no further comment, I will move us along to approval of the consent calendar, which is number 4 on our agenda. Are there any members of the City Council who would like to remove an item from the consent calendar for discussion?
Madam Mayor, a hand did go up in the audience.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. I must have shut that down. I will go back. Is Julian Skinner still available to answer a question?
I am still here, yeah.
It looks like we have one hand, and I believe it's Mr. Dr. Wagstaff. Is that you again? I believe you've been unmuted.
Yes, good evening. Thank you. Yeah, so I certainly would express my appreciation for all the hard work, and I understand projects go the way that they go, and but wanting to think more about the vetting of the neighborhood the 5 years before and how that goes. The same as you might find a utility line that you needed to make a new plan about and change up. You discover that there are some impacts of the project that are detrimental to a business, where you have patients that are nervous being in the office and you have to reschedule, and then all that I'm offered is a plan, a schedule that then is stated that it's not reliable. It's completely disrupting my business. And so wanted to know what in these planning, what is the city willing to do now that these things have come to light, as far as change orders or the Caltrans allotment, to move forward? Because I'm going to keep raising my hand to get some attention, and now that we've got this going on, this update, there's going to be a lot more time still where I have to have my practice disrupted, and I'm on ground level with single pane windows in an old building, and some of these things could have been anticipated. Even if I were in meetings 5 years ago to discuss like anticipated things, I would not know what the rumbling would be or the volume or different things like that. And now that's being, it's a big problem. I can't really schedule my business correctly. I can't do surgical procedures on patients because I'm using a 15 blade. And so as much as I would acknowledge the dynamics of a project like this, I'm from a side of empathy with my patients. Like, we're scheduling something and we can't work then. And I've got this list now of lots of Larkspur residents that are just like, how is this allowed to go on? How are you supposed to have a practice here? And so I'd really like to get that addressed as soon as possible.
Okay, so I have your phone number, and I'm going to schedule a meeting with the three of us. And I have to, I think it's realistic that you also realize that there's only a certain amount of things that the city or a construction project can do to mitigate some of the concerns that you have. But I am going to bring that direct, and I will reach out to you at 925-1151. And don't see anyone else who is speaking, so we will move on to our next project, which is the approval of the consent calendar. Is there any member of the city council who would like to pull an item for discussion? No? Is there any member of the public who would like to pull an item from the consent calendar for discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll take a motion for approval of the consent calendar.
Moves the consent calendar, Madam Mayor.
Okay, it looks like Gabe Paulson.
He gets a second.
Was seconded by Dan Hilmer. Can we have the roll call vote?
Councilmember Candell,
Yes.
Councilmember Hilmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Paulson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Haroff,
Yes.
Mayor Way.
Yes. That brings us to 5, which is the city manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. I'll be very brief. First, following up, you had a speaker at your last meeting making inquiries about what the city's planning to do for the holiday season to add to the festive feel in the downtown and on North Magnolia. And I just wanted to update the council on a few of the things that are in motion. One is that we're working on a plan to put lights on City Hall and the fire station. And we will also be looking at ways we may be able to put some lights on some of our other vegetation and properties around downtown and North Magnolia. And then we also have ordered banners for the holiday season to replace the ones that are up now. If you've noticed, we have banners up on some of our light poles, encouraging folks to shop locally and dine locally, and we'll be replacing those with something that promotes the season. And so we are also looking at what other decor options we can implement in the coming weeks as we enter into this critical season for our businesses. We want to make it a inviting place to be as much as we can contribute to that. And then in addition, I just wanted to thank Public Works Director Julian Skinner and his team. I think that if you've been in downtown lately, the parklets have really been a success, and he worked very hard to help the restaurants make those the viable situations that they are so that they could offer more outdoor dining. So I wanted to take this opportunity with Julian here to acknowledge that. That's really it for tonight. I did want to also note for the council and the public, there's a possibility that the November 18 meeting will be canceled, and we encourage folks to keep an eye out. The limited number of business items that we see materializing for the 18th probably can be pushed to December. So we may do that so that we can sort of schedule out things a little more appropriately.
Okay, thank you. There are questions the council has of the city manager's report? Dan Hilmer, do you have one? I don't see a hand raised. Okay. Terrific. That brings us to council members' reports. And I'd like to begin tonight with Vice Mayor Hara. If you'd like to.
I think Councilmember Paulson had his hand raised there for a moment, unless I missed that.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Gabe.
thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Briefly, I was wondering with the masks that were being handed. months back, just a quick update on how that's gone. Any lessons learned, any successes in trying to get masks out to members through the different agency or different departments?
Well, I'd say the entity that did the most mass distribution was probably the Central Maine Police. We provided a lot of masks to them for that purpose. Early on in the pandemic, there were a lot of opportunities for officers to offer a mask and use it as an educational opportunity. I know that has tapered off quite a bit, in part because generally we're seeing good compliance in the community. People have their own masks now. So I don't actually have a count of what our current supply level is on the disposable masks, and I'll need to check. I can get you that inventory offline, and we can discuss if there's a good use for it if it's in an excess number right now. So,
thank you.
Okay. Do we have council members' reports that would like to begin?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Kevin Haroff, unless anyone else wants to step in.
Step up.
Step up. Step in. Either way. So I just have a couple things that I wanted to mention very briefly. One is just to make a little report on conversations that I've been participating in, so is our city manager, with the county and other jurisdictions about the prospect of renaming what is currently called Sir Francis Drake Drive. As everyone has noticed, the road rehabilitation project is now in full gear. It will take probably the better part of the next year to be completed. But while that project is going forward, I think there's a sense among some of us within the community, and I mean the larger community, to take this as an opportunity to consider the prospect of renaming the boulevard. So we've been having some conversations about that with the county and other individual jurisdictions that are affected by the routing of the street. We're going to have a meeting. We've had a number of meetings, but we're going to have another meeting on November 20th among our larger committee that has been set up to address that issue. And I'm hoping that we'll use that opportunity to make a recommendation for consideration by all of the jurisdictions, including the city of Larkspur, to address whether the boulevard should be renamed, and at least in an initial way, how that renaming could possibly occur. As I said, I think there's a general consensus that this is a good time to make progress on this issue, given the physical rehabilitation of the street. But it's a process that we anticipate will require a lot of public involvement and consideration by our city council, as well as I said, other jurisdictions that are implicated by the routing of the road. So that's that. The second one is maybe more current and reflective of what has happened over the course of the last week. I have been involved in discussions with a number of you and with others throughout our community about the event that the other day that happened, involving racially motivated intimidation by outside groups towards members of our community in Marin City, which is very, very troubling to me. Some of those activities seem prompted by political considerations related to our ongoing national election process. That's fine. But quite honestly, in a broader sense, it seems like an exercise in outright racism, regardless of what is happening on the larger political scene. So I just wanted to take this opportunity briefly to express my own view that that type of behavior focused on Marin City is intolerable. and inconsistent with our collective Marin County values. And I want to stress, maybe a little bit contrary to some of the other messaging that's gone out on this issue recently throughout the county, this is not just a matter of electoral intimidation. It is a matter of racial injustice in our larger community. And I found it quite offensive. And I think it's important for our community in Larkspur to join me on the council and throughout the public in condemning it.
Very well said. Thank you for doing that. Very well said.
That's it.
Great. I appreciate those comments, Kevin, and I think they're very thoughtful. Councilmember and Candell, did you have some?
Thank you. I just have something briefly based on what Kevin was saying. I'm on the renaming committee as well. And one of the things that came up as a viewpoint was that while renaming the boulevard may be a significant symbol of change and the desire to change, it's really just that, symbolic. And the question has come up of, okay, now that we may or may not agree to make this symbolic gesture, what other actions do we plan on taking to address this systemic issue? And I wanted to just bring that up in this forum to, I guess, ask, what is the way as a city council that we decide, should we take some action? What action should that be? I'm not exactly sure the way forward. We don't have it as an agenda item. We don't have a committee to deal with that other than the larger issue dealing with the street renaming. So I just wanted to put out there, as a council, I would love for us to be a little proactive in this area. I'm just not sure how to go about it.
I appreciate that, and I think that's worth a further conversation when we can have it, and then have a direction as to what we think would be possible for us to do. I don't think this is kind of the time to do it now because there hasn't been enough reflection. Did you want to weigh in on that, Dan Schwartz?
No, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Candell addressed the point that it wasn't on the agenda, and I just was coming in case needed.
Okay. Dan Hilmer, your hand is raised.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to express my support for the comments made by Vice Mayor Hara related to the incident in Marin City. I just want to share my outrage, and I think we're better than that.
Agreed. All right, Gabe, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, also I wanted to say the same as Kevin and Dan. I was very happy that we took the time to express that. I think when the George Floyd murder occurred, we put out a statement, and if there's any way to put out a similar statement, I would most gladly sign that. I think it was a really alarming behavior, and something that I think the whole council strongly stands against. On another note, I just wanted to acknowledge the some of the volunteer work we heard from the Community Foundation. One of the players are our neighborhood response groups, and they just had a drill this past Sunday. And I know, looking out in the audience, some of the members were participating. I saw Larry Chu there, and Gabriel Gessmer and others. And I just want to thank and Dan Hilmer as well, the people who are really trying to, with all the fire season and COVID and everything going on, create a safer community by standing up and drilling and working with the 43 neighborhood response groups that we have in Larkspur and Corte Madera. And, with the fire season ending and flood season coming up, there will be a new emphasis, but a real thanks to them. There was a high degree of participation. I drove through about 8 NRGs myself, and I was really pleased to see Greenbrae had lots of okay signs, and driving through Larkspur Marina and other places. I didn't realize how well organized they were. So, thank you to all the community members, and let's keep it going.
Great.
Thank you.
Terrific. All right, I think that brings us to number 7, which is a public hearing, and we have none tonight. I know we have a lot of members of our audience who are interested in item 8.1, which is a letter of intent between the city and the Commons Foundation. The council is to consider signing up a letter of intent with the Commons Foundation concerning the project on the community facility parcel. And before we have the before we have the manager's report on that, I'd like to acknowledge the almost 40 public comments that have come in by email already. And I appreciate people taking the time to do that. And they are already listed by our city clerk on our agenda so that they can be read concurrently or later. I'd also like to point people to the city's website, which has a community facility parcel tab on it, in which you can read all of the documents that have come and all the work that's been done in the past on this, going back to probably 2009, when there was a planning commission staff report listed there. But the main one being the 2013 Rose Lane development meetings that took place through the community to decide what to happen at that parcel. And I think we're coming full circle around right now. And before we have the manager's report on this, I'd also like to acknowledge the hard work that our Ann Morrison, who was our previous mayor and council member, and Larry Chu have done on this project, particularly Ann Morrison, and how much time she spent working with the community to get us to this point now, and working with the Commons Foundation to get us to this point now. So let's begin. Dan, would you like to give the staff report, please?
I'll be happy to, Madam Mayor and council members. So before you is a letter of intent that was drafted after discussions between the council's ad hoc committee, which is Mayor Way and Vice Mayor Hara, and representatives of the Commons Foundation, the nonprofit that was created to pursue funding to develop a public facility on the community facility parcel that's at the corner of Rose Lane and Doherty Drive. The council has been doing its due diligence for the last few years to figure out what options are available to the city, what the city can and can't afford. And of course, the COVID economy has raised a lot of doubts about what the city can and can't accomplish in the near term with respect to the property. So the Commons Foundation suggested that perhaps we should take a step back and revisit talks that had occurred many moons ago about developing the property in a phased approach, where we would do a smaller project that might then lead to future larger projects. This was something that was vetted back when the master plan for the property was discussed. And the Commons Foundation representatives suggested that if they were given a sufficient window of time and some clarity and commitment from the city, they felt confident they could raise $5 million to build some sort of initial facility or phase on the property. And so the ad hoc committee has been working with the Commons Foundation to craft some sort of agreement that would be something that the Commons Foundation could hold up as a statement or an agreement that the city was committed to building something if they did raise $5 million. And it was important for the city that the agreement be structured in such a way that there wasn't going to be risk to the city financially if the goals of the Commons Foundation came up short, or if a project was awarded and the project cost ended up being more than the amount that had been raised. So you'll note that a significant part of this letter of intent that's before you is that the project would be done through a process that's called design build. And under design build, you essentially go out to the development community and you say, we have X amount of dollars. What can you build us for X amount of dollars that looks roughly like this project description that we have? And so that's our intent here, is to work collaboratively so that the Commons Foundation can go out and raise this money, and then we'll go out and we'll see what the development community can do for us. And hopefully our vision and the development community's capabilities and capacity are aligned, and we end up with a wonderful project that will serve as the first development of the community facility parcel into the vision that the community established when it adopted the master plan. It's important to emphasize that while the agreement is not legally binding on the council, it's a strong expression of intent on the part of the council. And in entering into this letter of intent, the ad hoc committee is essentially recommending to the whole council that it bind itself in terms of a statement to the community. And I think that's very important to underscore. So with that, Madam Mayor, I will turn it back to you and the council. And I don't know if you or Vice Mayor Haroff have any additional comments.
I would just like to comment that this has been a process that started at least 2 years ago in this conversation with the Commons Foundation under the direction of Mayor Ann Morrison before and Kevin Haroff. And then when Mayor Morrison retired from the council, I took over that role. So I've been in this now for a little over a year. So it's been a very thoughtful process, give and take. I really want to applaud the patience of our community and the patience of the Commons Foundation members, many who have become my friends, that moving our way through this process has been sometimes a step forward and a step backwards, but I think we've reached a really terrific position right now, and I'd love us to all move forward together with the Friends of the Library and the Library Foundation and Endowment community members to see how we can make this project happen. Is there any other comment, Kevin, that you might have?
No, I mean, I agree with all that. It's been this has been working through the issues related to this matter has been almost as protracted as dealing with the Bonaire Bridge, and we're still working it out. I think this letter is a good step forward, and I actually want to compliment the input or those who have provided input from the Rose Lane community on where we are. I know we got a lot of comments from our neighbors there, which seemed generally to be positive about how we are moving forward. So I just want to do a shout out for that particular community because this facility is in their midst. So thank you.
Are there questions from the other 3 council members about this item to our city manager? Don't see any hands raised in the council. I'd like to now open this up to the public, recognizing that we've had over 40 emails sent in. If there's any member of the community who's in the audience as an attendee who would like to speak at this time, go ahead and raise your hand on the Zoom platform here, and we'll recognize you. All right, seeing none. Allison, is there any additional email comments that have come in during the course of the meeting?
There's no additional email comments.
Okay, so I'll bring it back to the city council. Any further questions on this? No? Before we do a vote, I would really like to take this time to recognize the extraordinary work of Joe Jennings and Jeannie Fidel and team. And we will miss Joe as he ventures on to a new life in the Seattle area. But his commitment to really ramping this up and bringing this to this stage in the process of community work has been a real dedication. So look forward to seeing what your next adventures do, and See how you survive the rainy, wet winters.
Although, if Madam Mayor, if I could, I just will have to say what I have already said to Mr. Jennings, that his decision to move back to Seattle is a reflection of poor judgment on his part.
All right, we'll leave it at
But
that.
notwithstanding that, I really appreciate very much his contribution to this process moving forward. So, good luck with the rain. Good luck with the rain.
Do I have a motion to accept the business item?
I would like to be I would like to be the one to move approval of adoption of this letter.
Good. We're gonna do.
I'll second that. And I would also, Madam Mayor, this is Dan Hilmer. I'd like
Yes.
to thank Joe for all of his work and tireless effort in pursuit of this goal. I've never considered any of his judgments to be poor. And I completely understand any decision he might make related to family, and just want to express my gratitude and appreciation on behalf of the community for all his hard work.
You're much kinder than I am.
All right, Allison, can we take a roll call vote before this really spins out of control?
Councilmember Candell,
Yes.
Councilmember Hilmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Paulson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Haroff,
Yes.
Mayor Way.
Yes. Everybody get out your checkbook. So the launch is happening. So that brings us to 8.2, which is a review of the work plan and revised scope for the Council Ad Hoc Committee on Financial Matters. That Ad Hoc Committee we formed in, I believe in March, we reconnected with it when COVID struck our community and the business and financial shutdown started. So this same committee, which is myself and Vice Mayor Haroff, with the addition of Emeritus Council Member Larry Chu, has met again to review a possible work product and the scope for the Council Ad Hoc Committee. And that is in a memorandum, which was published, I believe, on Monday afternoon. So it is available for the community to see. And I would like to begin with a staff report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to clarify a couple of procedural points. One is the previous Ad Hoc Committee on Financial Matters had a slightly different charge than this one. So we've actually named this committee with a focus on revenue options. But it is true, we have a habit of, or we have a history of sort of reconstituting financial committees from time to time. I also want to underscore that former council member Larry Chu is a guest of the Ad Hoc Committee, but not an actual voting member of the Ad Hoc Committee.
Thank you for clarifying that. It's getting late in my day, so I misconstrued a few of those definitions. So thank you for clarifying.
Oh, not misconstrued, but I'm trying to see if I can go the whole meeting without Sky having to unmute himself. So
We paid the big bucks for us when the mayor.
So the committee met on Friday, and that's why we didn't issue the memo until Monday. The committee met with staff to go over the different categories that staff felt were potential revenue options that were viable for Larkspur based on what we see in the current trends in the law, options in the law, current trends out in various communities, both near and far in California. And then we had a discussion with the committee about prioritizing these various categorizations in terms of how we would work on them. And we talked a bit about sort of just anecdotally where we thought there might be stronger nexus between revenue generation and general sentiment or public support in our community. And so all of these categories will be explored. We're just going to do them in the order that they've been enumerated in the memo, which is that we're going to first provide the council through the Ad Hoc Committee with an assessment of how a city could go about increasing its property transfer tax. So this is the assessment that is paid by the seller on the sale of their home. General law cities are actually constrained to a prescribed formula in state law, but charter cities have the ability to adjust this tax level. And so we'll essentially be looking at what would it take for the city of Larkspur to become a charter city, and simultaneously ask the voters to look at the property transfer tax. The second category we'll be looking at is the local transaction and use tax, which we often call a sales tax. It's a slightly different version of sales tax. So this is like our Measure B that we have in place now. And we probably would be looking at it much akin to what you saw passing handily in San Rafael yesterday, which is a measure to supplement the general fund, particularly through this difficult period economically. And then another one, a measure that was passing handily in Novato, is to increase the transient occupancy tax, the hotel tax. Larkspur currently is at 8% on hotel tax, and that's something we might want to look at as a possible area. Now, of course, right now, that's not a robust revenue stream, but we certainly would hope and expect that it'll come back as the COVID situation dies down. A couple of other options we want to explore that the ad hoc committee was interested in. One is the state law now offers the option of defining your storm drain system as a utility and then charging a utility service fee, much as you would see for sewer. And we thought we would take a look at that and at least report out and do our due diligence. It's one that hasn't been tested yet in California. It's a very new law, so there's not going to be a lot of case studies to review there. And then the last two, one is you always have the option to do a special purpose property or parcel assessment. A good example of one in Marin that's been used by several communities is an assessment to fund library operations. Of course, one of the concerns of the ad hoc committee is to not sort of put our other partners in our community in a situation where they might be concerned about their revenue streams, and our two school districts do rely on special purpose property taxes for some of their operational needs. And then lastly, on the list, we have the option of adopting an excise tax on any specific good or services. Probably the one getting the most acknowledgement in the headlines lately is cannabis, but there are other goods and services that can be looked at for an excise tax. A few years ago, it was popular to look at whether or not to put an excise tax on soda pop, for example. So that's the work program, and it's the desire of the committee that staff report through it to the council on these topics and complete all of our research in early 2021 so that we then can develop a plan to engage the community and get a sense of their preferences and what they would support. It seems very likely that we're on track where if we do ask the voters for their support, it's going to happen in 2022. With that, I turn it back to the mayor and council members.
And I think just to reiterate that we've done, because of the revenue reduction that happened this year and because of COVID, we did some strategic planning quickly in March and April, thanks to the city manager's quick response to be able to be financially stable through this upcoming fiscal year. So we are not feeling compelled to engage any of this on a crisis mode. We're in a pretty good position now. But I think these are all really important things for us to continue to look at what options there are in the future, since the future is still uncertain. Is there anything you wanted to add, Kevin, as a member of this subcommittee, ad hoc committee?
Yeah, just very, very briefly. And I very much appreciate that summary. And I think the memo and the discussion by the city manager accurately reflects the conversation that we've had. The one thing that I just wanted to maybe comment on or ask a question about is on the process for moving to a charter city status, which would be thing that would be required to allow the increase in the property transfer tax. That would be, I assume, a somewhat lengthy legalistic process that we'd have to go through, maybe more so than some of the other items that we have on the list. So maybe some comment on just the timing of the timing and the structure of the process that we would we would have to go through in order to accomplish that change.
So the legal process that we initially anticipate, one that we're seeing used by other communities who've done this recently, is to essentially tell the voters, we're going to follow general law, the law that we follow now, with the exception of the property transfer tax. So the complexity legally is pretty modest. I think that the concept of becoming a charter city and adjusting the transfer tax is one where there's a need to educate the public quite a bit about what you're doing. It's not a concept that the voters see every day. So I think the lengthy time is in the engagement and education part of the process.
I think that's right. Right.
You know, I made a reference earlier to San Rafael's sales tax. They were able to put that out there with a pretty clear message. Here's our problem. We'd like you to approve this sales tax. And the engagement was in a fairly condensed timeline. And the voters can do that because they understand sales tax. But we're going to be getting in the weeds of government operations when we start talking to them about what a charter city is versus a general law city. And that just takes time to build up that education and comfort.
I think that's absolutely right, because it sounds like a bigger change than maybe it is in fact, but it still it does create a change in the status of the city under state law, and I just want to make sure that we provide an opportunity for the public to be educated about why we might be doing that and what the time frame is and what the implications are and why our focus is relatively narrow in scope in order to accomplish that goal.
I see Councilmember Candel's hand is raised. You can keep your camera off, Scott, if it's preferable.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I can hear you.
I just had a question or a comment. My understanding is that this subcommittee is going to basically come back to council with options. And what I am requesting, or what would be helpful for me in evaluating these different options, are to go on what Vice Mayor Harf was saying. I would love for each of these options for it to be almost, in my mind, like a grid, as far as what would each option cost, what would be the time frame for each option, what are the hurdles required for each option? Do we need, voter approval? What do we need to do to make this happen? What do we, if there's some type of probability that we think that we would be successful with this option, maybe who does it affect? For example, the transfer occupancy tax, clearly is going to affect one business in our community much more than anybody else. So if that's something that we are considering, I would want to have the buy-in of that business and not just do something that would be hurtful to one of the businesses in our community. So I would, when this comes back, those are probably the types of things that I would love to see as a comparison between these options, so that we can evaluate as a city council which, if any, would be the most appropriate for us moving forward. Thank you.
That sounds like an interesting approach. I mean, it sounds like looking at all the stakeholders and the pros and cons. So
if I could just comment, Madam Mayor, I think Councilmember Candel's request is about 90% what I understood the direction of the ad hoc committee to be. The one caveat is I believe we'll be reporting back to the council in early 2021 with all of the information that Councilmember Candel's talking about, other than public opinion. I think a big question that you'll have to wrestle with as a council is the cost to engage the community and garner true measures of public opinion. We can report our anecdotal belief about what public opinion is, but we aren't going to readily be able to measure that.
No, and I appreciate that. And maybe I misspoke. I didn't mean, and maybe when I was saying chances of success, that was what I guess I was implying on what you heard. I think probably more of what I mean is, if we decided we wanted to be a charter city, what do we have to do? Do we need voter approval to do that? What is the process? If we wanted to increase the sales tax, what is the process, the time frame? Maybe not if you think voters would approve it or not. So I apologize. I agree that probably shouldn't be one of the categories that you're coming back with.
Okay, well, this is a work in progress. Are there any members of the community that has a question on this? If you're in the attendees, we have 8 left. You may raise your hand, and seeing none, I will bring it back to us. That was just the business update, a review plan, so there's nothing to vote on. And we'll continue to meet regularly and work with the staff on this. That brings us to 8.3, which is our standard since March update on the city activities with regards to COVID-19.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just had a few items to give you this evening, and they're sort of follow-up to the presentations we finished last month. I wanted to make you aware of a couple revenue streams and what we're now seeing. We have received an allocation from the state for our August sales tax. And you may recall that when we got our July allocation, it was 200,000, but only 30,000 were true receipts, and 170 was an advance from the state based on a formula that they use. And I expressed to you concern that the state will eventually do a true up against the actual receipts, which takes them several months to know. And so we're going to be waiting to see what happens. We had a similar check come in for the August receipts. We got about 200,000 again, of which about 70,000 is actual receipts. So still a very murky picture for us about what's really going on. Probably won't have our full comprehension of the true ups situation until we get to the end of November or into December. However, and I know Administrative Services Director Kathy Orm has toughed out this whole meeting in case you have any questions during this item. She and I are meeting tomorrow with our sales tax consultant, and we're hoping that they're actually going to be able to provide us with more dynamic information than the state's providing us, because the state's giving us information every 30 days, and we'd like to see what they can get because they have access to the state's database and can go in and see what's happening on a more regular basis. The other thing is we are getting mixed messages from our TOT returns. And so Kathy's actually reached out to our main TOT source, which is the Courtyard by Marriott, to have a conversation about what's really happening on the ground so we can get a better sense of what the trend is out there, so we can give you a sense of that in the near future. And again, though, on the property tax front, we're getting very positive messages out of the county that everything looks on point to what we budgeted for. And in fact, we continue to see resale filings. So those are all positive. The other thing that's going on, I just want to share with the council, COVID related, is very strong interest in the community in accessory dwelling units, particularly after the recent workshop that was held. And so we're getting a lot of new activity at the planning and building counter as people are asking what it would entail to either convert a portion of their home to an accessory dwelling unit or build a new unit on their property. So very interesting new trend in Larkspur that we're going to be monitoring very closely. Turn it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions of that update? That all sounds good. It sounds like we are kind of in an equilibrium now for a bit.
No, Madam Mayor, I just on that last point, I think that's a really a positive development, and I'm hoping we're going to make progress on that front.
Do we have members of the community? There are very few of you left who are interested in asking a question about update on the city's activities and finances with regards to coronavirus. Okay, seeing none, that brings us back to at the end of our meeting. As the city manager stated in the beginning, we are possibly not having a regular meeting, which is scheduled for November 18th. So just look forward to that email. If we don't have that meeting, then our next scheduled one after that, I believe, is December 4th.
I have December 2nd in my head, but
December 2nd.
December 2nd, yes.
Yes. All right. If there's nothing left to do tonight, I'd like to thank everybody for attending and thank the participants and all of the members of the public who submitted comments in advance. And I will take a motion to dismiss. Let's
So
go.
moved.
It's so moved. Thank you, Dan Hilmer. Is there a second?
Second.
Dave Paulson. All right. Good night, everyone, and stay safe. And let's keep our fingers crossed about whatever way this election is going to turn out, that we have communities that remain calm and take this as a peaceful transition of power should it end up that way. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.